Hey everybody, welcome to the YouTube channel. If you like these videos, click like or subscribe. Also, patreon.com stroke Will Franken, patreon.com stroke Will Franken. Please help support me. Today we're going to talk about Naztec software version 11.2. There's a lot of good things in this module, but there's a few things. 'Cause I'm kind of a 10.4 guy, and there's a little bit of a hiccup in the newer module, but I'm going to show you some ways around that in this tutorial. And the first way around that is just to say, fuck computers. Get a book and move out to the country and live the life of a proper Luddite. Put principle into action. And if we could all organize a mass Luddite rebellion in our own lives, we could get back to the truth somehow. I am proud to be a Luddite. Somebody said something recently on that horrible fucking thing, social media, about, somebody was complaining about rap, and of course I had to jump in and give my 2 cents on rap. And then somebody, illiterate thugs, stealing other people's music and sewing it together and calling it their own, just basically what hip hop and rap is. And then somebody said this to me like it was an insult. Sounds like a Luddite. Yes. Thank you for the compliment. But, they meant it with a sneer, like it's bad to be a Luddite. It's a good and noble thing to be a Luddite. You should be proud to be a Luddite. You should be proud. You should be proud only to accidentally discover things like what LMFAO means. You should be proud of this. It means you come from a generation that once upon a time knew things like grammar and reading and concentrating. I love that theory of mine that the reason there's an overdiagnosis of ADHD is because of technology. We're all ADHD. We got a phone, we got a screen. Some of us have more than that. We just that, an iPad. Christ, man. Of course we're ADHD. Everything is in tweets now. How can we concentrate on anything? How could anybody watch a 6-hour Russian film on Andrei Rublev? Was it Tarkovsky? Who can read the history of the Peloponnesian War? Well, I can, and I'm proud of it. Anyway, I was going to tell you my Me Too story. Actually, I've got a few Me Too stories. So I was out in South London yesterday. I'm going to try to do 2 of these. I may have to do 2 of these today. Because I like the ritual of going Monday through Friday and doing an hour and then taking 2 days off. I just like it. But because I'm going to Wales tomorrow morning, and I'm not sure if they're getting me a hotel or if I'm staying with the booker, but if they're getting me a hotel, I'll do one out there for the Friday video before the show, and then have that for you Friday. But if not, if he texts back and says, "Oh, you're staying with me," then I'll try to do 2 today, which is going to be very bizarre. So I'll have to have that. I'll eat my breakfast and then come back and do another one, if that's the case. So I'll text him afterwards and see if. Anyway, what do you care? Are they going to get the video? But thanks for watching these, and thanks to the patrons. And I didn't hear back from anybody about whether or not they wanted to have an hour of my schizophrenic ditties. I've got tons of schizoid songs that I've written throughout my entire life that I've never shared with anyone other than women who have lived with me, and I have felt comfortable enough to expose, the depths of my supposed insanity. To me, it's just there's a beauty in word salad. I've always loved word salad. That's why I love those Python sketches like, "Good morning, doctor. May I downsit? Oh, I see you're having problems with your words." E. Henry Thripshaw's disease, where the guy, monkey gibbon, it's word salad. I've always been attracted to word salad. The beauty of nonsense. There's a inherent beauty to subconscious nonsense in its unfiltered form. Anyway, so I went out to South London yesterday because Janet, the elderly lady, Janet, I don't know if she's insulted. I do, but I like elderly people because they are history, and she has an album from her grandfather's experiences in World War I, a big, huge scrapbook, and I love looking at that stuff. I love reading old letters and seeing old, bills of fare and things like that, and it was nice. And she made me a steak as well. Actually, you can, if you want me to come to your house, cook me a steak. It's that simple. No, she's a good person. She's taken a few of my satire courses. She runs some shows out there in Balham. You know Balham? Gateway to the South. That was the Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers referred to Balham as the gateway to the South. And it's funny because I spent, was it 5 years ago? I was seeing a girl that lived out in Balham, just down the road from Janet, this French chick. And it was, it's amazing what confidence can do to you. And I don't know where she is now. We were friends for a while, and then I don't know. Maybe she's one of that lot who just decided, oh fuck Will Franken, he voted for Trump, or I don't know. It's scary sometimes. Sometimes you have too much free time on your hands. You start to wonder, like, where the hell is she? What, does she hate me now too? And then there's some people who just never answer the phone, so it's pointless. But in 2012, my confidence was through the roof, man. You can imagine. I mean, I'd done this great Fringe. I had a shitload of 4 and 5 star reviews the press was great, and everybody, loved it. And then I came down to London, and she said, oh, you can stay with me until you get a place in London. I was there for about a week. And then the sex, I found that she was like wanting to hang out with me. And, during the day, we can go for a walk, and then we're walking. I think this chick likes me, and why shouldn't she? This is how male confidence works, right? And why shouldn't she like me? I mean, I'm Will Franken. I did this great show. I got these I'm a star. There's probably a sexiness to my accent. I don't know, but whatever. And it just so happened, it was just like, it felt very natural, to get with her. But there was a weird sense of deja vu, because I've been back to Balham since a few times, but it was a very troubling sense of deja vu yesterday when I went out there. It was just like, not even deja vu, just like, how time has passed. Like, here I am in Balham again. And I was over at Janet's house, and Janet was talking about the Me Too hashtag, which I didn't know about, because hashtags, please. I said, what do you mean Me Too? She goes, you don't know about Me Too? And then once she described it, I go, oh, yeah, you're talking about all the women coming forward now that have been molested, raped, leered at, touched. Yeah, I've heard of that. I didn't know there was a hashtag associated with it, because hashtags are stupid, aren't they? I mean, how dumb is it? If you can't afford it can't be ours to go out and get a ribbon now. And the ribbon was bad enough, the ribbons, the candles, the teddy bears, the hashtags. Let's get rid of the passion, the romance, the weaponry, and let's get the ribbons, the candles, the teddy bears, and the hashtags. It's becoming feminized. Everything is becoming, no offense to the women, it's just these institutions. I mean, these separate male female things, these worlds are becoming just kind of blended together. I don't know, and it seems like I don't want to be one of these bitter men. I just don't want to be one of these bitter men, but sometimes it's hard. Anyway, so she's telling me this, and I start thinking, well, I've got a few Me Too stories. I've got some Me Too stories, and I thought I'd share one. I'll share both of them with you today, actually. But this is one of those things that, because every day that I don't fuck around with social media is like, here's the thing. I'm an alcoholic, and I should not drink, right? I'm a drug addict, and I should not take drugs, right? The way I've always used alcohol from a very early age, it's more of a conscious suicidal decision. I've never had like, oh yes, a few drinks will be fine. Oh yes, what I don't know anything about wines, for example. I wouldn't be able to, 1929 Bouche-à-la-Roi. It's like, oh, that's a fiver, right? So but it's always been for me like, if something, life becomes overwhelming, and then I decide, fuck it, right? And then it becomes that's why I got to tell you, like the Sean Hughes, when he died early this week, it was kind of like maybe a warning sign, like that. and I don't know how the hell it happened, but because cirrhosis of the liver was mentioned, and because I had knowledge of kind of what had happened to him because the fact that we both shared, um, we both had, I was seeing a girl that he used to see, and I would hear about what he was going through, and it was, and I, but because my jealousy and male ego were threatened, I couldn't actually, I had an opportunity possibly to have been there for somebody, like in a, I'm not sure if I'm describing this well, but let's just say I understand the self-destructive tendencies. That there comes a point where you feel like you hit your ceiling. You feel like either everybody's against you, or you lost all your chances, or whatever. That there's no way to rebuild your career, your life, whatever, and then you just So alcohol has always been a very suicidal thing for me. It's a very conscious act of suicide. I've never deluded myself into. I mean, from the moment I discovered it when I was 14, I found drugs and alcohol on the same night. I'll get back to that later. Let me get back to that later. What is this, an AA meeting? But I did. I discovered them on the same night, and I was like, "Fuck, this is the answer to all my problems." There was that. And then when I found it was a creative dimension to it and all that. But as I got older, it was more like, "Fuck it," The world is horrible. I'll never be able to. The negative shit gets so strong, And social media is another aspect of that. It has become another aspect of that. That it becomes this thing that I really have to resist it, like I do a drink, right? I really have to just, So outside of posting these videos and saying, here's a link to the latest video, I try these days just to stay the fuck off it. And yet, I found myself writing a Me Too story last night, and I kept thinking, what's my motive? My motive. You have to examine your motives now. Like my first motive in writing my Me Too story, which I'm going to share with you, both of them. My motive was initially, it's always inspired by a little bit of anger, right? So when I hear about these, and I saw there was one girl there's a girl that I liked, and how it is. You turn on Facebook. I wasn't searching for anything. You just turn on Facebook, and then there it is. It's the first story that comes up, and she's talking about this guy that one time when I was, at work, and this guy drove me home, and he shoved his tongue down my throat. But then he said, we didn't actually have sex with you, but he shoved. So they didn't actually have sex. He just shoved his tongue down your throat. He wanted to have sex, but you didn't, and you didn't have sex. And then the next day he came over to your house. This was her story. The next day he came over to your house and said, oh, please don't tell anybody because, I'm in a relationship, and I'm sorry about last night. And that was her story. So basically all that happened in that story was he shoved his tongue down her throat. And I was like, what do you mean shoved? Did he burst through your teeth, your closed teeth, with a really sharp tongue? So the first thing that happens is my cynicism comes to the fore. And I go, okay, I call me a cynic, but I don't happen to believe that every man is latently or actively a rapist. This is something that's, and because it has hashtag to it, and because honestly, because it has hashtag to it, and because it's a women's kind of movement, online movement, it has a credibility that goes unquestioned, right? Nobody, and so what is it in me? Is it an impish quality in me that has to question the unquestionable? And so my first reaction was that, like, okay, I've got a Me Too story. I've got a couple of Me Too stories. So that's the first motive. But by the time I finished writing this Me Too story, I realized that it was something more. Because I did have shame around this, and I'm going to share it with you now. I've actually told this story before, but for those of you who are on Facebook, I'll read this out to you if you don't mind me being a bit indulgent. I'll read this out because it was also an interesting writing exercise, because I just completed this 500 word thing for the Index on Censorship, which is going to be published hopefully tomorrow. And it was about, they asked me what do you feel is the greatest threat to satire? And because that's, the type of writing that I want to do, it goes much slower. It's you have to sentence structure, and you want to, don't repeat words. And, I'm very, very of all the fields I get involved in, any kind of literary writing, any kind of essay writing I'm the most perfectionist about, and because that was my whole field as a kid, English literature, and the perfectionism was just overwhelming, and it took me a lot longer to get that one done than I had hoped for. But anyway, it's finished now. But man, I just really, but this one was really easy, because if you notice the Me Too stories, let's say like guns out there, the Me Too stories are written as if they are like fifth grade essays, right? So you don't really have to think too much. You just kind of just describe what happened. So this is how I started, and I started this off by saying, I'm not sure if my story will count, but here goes. See, I would never actually talk like that. I'm just, the satirist in me is mocking the tone. We're just gonna, don't put too much thought in it. Just tell what happened. I'm not sure if my story will count, but here goes. Hashtag me too. But as I was writing this, anyway, so I shared this story before, but here goes. For those of you who are on Facebook, about a year and a half ago, and I just want to say too, like I resisted posting this. See, because for somebody who's been off social media, like he's been refraining from a drink lately, it's just like, okay, actually, there's something they say in meetings sometimes. Let me see if I can get this right. It is, and this is one I'd hate to hear, but I know there's truth to this, because there's all sorts of aphorisms they'll say in meetings, and one of them is, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said right now? And does this need to be said by me? That's a tough one, because see, I'm very impulsive. And I go, oh yeah, well, fuck you, right? I mean, the fact that it took it was a month-long process to present the defining the normal words, but that was still, I never once asked myself that question. I didn't. Does it need to be said? I believe it did. Does it need to be said right now? This the state of comedy, where I saw comedy, the art of comedy, being led astray. Does it need to be said? I felt it did. Does it need to be said right now? I felt it did. I don't know how much longer comedy can continue to go down the leftist identity politics thing and hope to survive in any meaningful way. Does it need to be said by me? I guess at the time I didn't know who else was going to say it, or who was qualified to do like a Swiftian satire on the state of comedy. But we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. So this, I really debated about this. Does it need to be said? Maybe, I don't know. I didn't have any answers, but anyway, so I posted it, and then what happens is you wake up the next morning after you post. For me, if you write the kind of stuff I do, you wake up the next morning and you almost feel like hungover. Like, what did I do last night? Or so you wake up, okay, good morning. Like, oh fuck, I wrote that last night. Jesus Christ. Any complaints? But anyway, I wrote it, and here goes. I'm not sure if my story will count, but here goes. Hashtag me too. About a year and a half ago, a friend that I had always known as a lesbian came over to my flat to borrow my Shane Meadows box set. When we got to my room, we talked for a few minutes, and then she said, Will, I want to do something that you may think is weird. Then she got up and closed and locked my bedroom door and came over and straddled me in my chair. I remember feeling a brief sense of surprise and ego validation, but also a worry that if I didn't do a great job and go from 0 to 60 in no time flat, she might criticize my performance to her friends. Certainly not all, but some women can be cruel gossips when it comes to sexual matters. CF Sex in the City. Which I thought was good. So I had to make a point there. The women in Sex in the City are absolute cunts. And I've only seen a few episodes, but it's just, they're filthy cunts. They make your boyfriend drink this so his cum tastes better. And I know they pin the blame on the gay men that wrote the scripts. Say, it wasn't us. We were controlled by gay men. But that is, it shows women as nasty little gossips, and they compare penis sizes of their boyfriends and shit like that. So, it's not all Harvey Weinstein and Mother Teresa is what I'm trying to get at here. Let's have a little people think I'm black and white. I mean, if I'm black and white, it's only in reaction to the real black and white that's going on in the world right now. There's Harvey Weinstein's over here, and everybody's the Virgin Mary over here. I mean, all you got to do is fucking put on Sex in the City and go like, okay, come on, right? So every woman that watches Sex in the City is, what they're being. It's like when people, like, you say something about hip hop. Here's some anti-Semitism for you, right? They don't actually. A lot of people will say the Jews, right? But you say like, what about these fucking, what about these hip hoppers? Bang bang this and nigger nigger that. Well, yeah, but that's, a lot of times that's the Jewish record companies that make them do that. Okay, so that's your low opinion of black people then, and yet somehow I'm the racist. And yet you have such a low opinion of black people that all they are puppets controlled by evil Zionists to spit out, basically black on black violence and, illiteracy. Come on, man. Don't you understand that personal accountability is the way to liberation? Is the way out of racism? Why am I talking? Of course not. Who am I talking to? Okay. Certainly not all, but some women can be cruel gossips when it comes to sexual matters. CF, Sex in the City. See, for example, Sex in the City. Sure enough, she complained about me wanting to make out for a little longer and groaned, why can't we just get down to it? I felt like I was being disrespected as a human being and was only being used for my cock. Unfortunately, at that time, my self-esteem was very low, having not experienced any female attention for a while, and I did not believe at that time that I could do any better. So I saw her a few more times over the course of the next week because I thought something was wrong with me as a man and that I needed to toughen up because she never liked tenderness and often expressed her fantasy that she wanted to be thrown against the wall and have her clothes torn from her. Our final night together, she wanted to watch this horrible Kiwi film called We Were Warriors, shit film, about this scumbag wife beater and rapist. When the film was over, she indicated that the rape sequences in it were like her sexual fantasies, and that's why she didn't like it when I engaged in foreplay. By then, I had had enough of her bullshit. I told her that I was not a rapist and threw her out of my house. Nevertheless, I felt bad for a good few weeks afterwards because I thought something was wrong with me as a man because a woman had reacted negatively to my need for tenderness and foreplay. Now here's the kicker. By the time I got to the end of this, and I wrote this last sentence, I realized this has now gone beyond something. It started off just as an irritation of like, are you kidding? Okay, come on, yeah, with every man is a rapist shit. Oh, he looked at you funny. Now, now you're a victim, right? A lot of these stories that I've read, it's just he kissed me, he forced his tongue down my throat. We didn't actually have sex, but I realized at the time it was bad. I should have said something. I should have come forward, right? But it gets through this like it's this. The unquestioned credibility is what I have a problem with it. And why do I have a problem with the unquestioned credibility is because that is authority. And by default, I am an anti-authoritarian. My whole life I've been an anti-authoritarian. The church really scares me, therefore I have to make fun of the church. And then on through my life, and now you get to, okay, so this is the religion now. That's the religion, unquestioned credibility. Anti-authority. So by the time I got to the end of writing this, I realized it was something more. And this is the paralipsis. Here's your 50-cent word for the day. Who knows what paralipsis means? Paralipsis is in certain a paralipsis is not required for all satire, but your best satire has a paralipsis, and the paralipsis is the point in a satirical piece where the author or the presenter actually puts forward what he or she wants to see happen, but does it within a satirical framework. So the best example is Modest Proposal, right? So Swift spends page after page detailing how to cook the babies, how you can turn the carcasses into gloves for ladies' gloves, fashionable kid skin gloves. And then as you get to the end, he includes his paralipsis. Let no man speak to me of these other expedients. And then he gives a list of things that could be done, economic measures that could be taken, things that the British government could do. And then concludes by saying, let no man talk to me of these expedients unless he has, sorry, I don't have this. I once upon a time had the whole thing memorized. I would go around and actually present it at Southwest Missouri State University. I did all sorts of weird things. My one of my professors, his wife worked in the Springfield Opera, and she got me an 18th century costume, wig, and everything. And I went around with a slideshow. Sorry, this is a slight digression, but I memorized the entirety of A Modest Proposal. That's how much I was into Swift. And I would go to classes and do the slideshow about the gloves, and a freshly boiled child can be cooked into a fricassee or a ragout. What was it? Let no man. So he gets to the paralipsis. Let no man speak to me of these or other expedients unless he has a sincere desire to put them into practice. So that's your paralipsis. That's your paralipsis. This is what the satirist actually believes should happen, but it's still coded it's embedded within the actual satire. So here's my paralipsis. The closing line about the woman with the rape fantasies. Looking back, I know now that her belief that men should be rapists was warped thinking on her part, and that I should not feel guilty for not fitting her crude stereotype. Right? In other words, that's my paralipsis. Stop calling men rapist. Right? And acknowledge the fact that, and another thing too, like acknowledge the fact this is. See, I don't want to be held accountable for what people comment. Sometimes the people who are on my side make me nervous, and I don't want to censor anybody, but sometimes I get a little nervous. And so some guys are like, oh, some guys sarcastically saying like, oh, women have rape fantasies. Hashtag every woman I know. And I'm a little bit like, okay, just gotta be. You have to play this carefully. You've got to watch what you say, because I get paranoid. I don't want to be held accountable for what you said. I wouldn't have said it like that. But what you have to point out is that the Kinsey. I remember reading this in high school. The Kinsey study on the top 5 sexual fantasies of males and females. And I remember being very surprised. This is a high school age. I remember being very surprised to read that one of the top 5 fantasies, according to Kinsey, was rape fantasies. That women have rape fantasies. Men don't really have those, from what I remember. There were homosexual fantasies were in the top 5 for men and women, but I remember rape fantasies being there. And I thought, who would want to be raped? Wouldn't that be like the complete negation of love? I thought women liked love and sweetness. So, but so I started writing that as a reaction against this hashtag Me Too. But by the time I got to the end, I was like, you know what? It was only a year and a half ago, but I still forget that I was ashamed. I thought I'd not been for a woman. I'd not been with a woman in a while. I'd just gone through the 6-7 months of Sarah, one of my biggest regrets still to this day, because if you look Google News, if you look up the Google News, those are still the top stories. Like, transgender comedian decides to return to life as Will. I mean, that was the big story. The big story was not, thank God a comedian a really funny comedian, by the way, has the balls to go after Islam. I mean, that should be the story. That would be the story. And then finally what would happen is I'd eventually get killed, or I'd be marked as a target. Well, on the other hand, people would turn their backs on me. Like, the free-thinking West would turn their back on me and sell me down the river. The leadership would, I'm sure, if I was known for that. But no, it's that transgender comedian explains why he decided to return to Will. It's like, that's it. I'll always be tarnished with that. It shows what happens when you play around with their orthodoxies. But I had just gone through that. I felt used and worthless. I felt the only currency I had was the clothes I wore, and then there was this loneliness. I mean, once you realize, like, Jesus Christ, what am I doing? I want to be with a woman, or women, plural, And then you come out of that. So the first thing that happened was when she got on top of me, it was like, wow, I'm still sexy. Women still find me attractive. I mean, that went through my head. The second thought was, wait, I thought she was a lesbian. The third thought was this: you better knock this out of the park, man. You better fucking hit a home run, or you might never get some again. But if you do well, she's gonna go, oh, and you'll become the talk of this is your big opportunity, Will. It's your big opportunity to prove to yourself that you can succeed with women in England. You better knock this fucker out of the park. And that was a lot of shit going through my head. And so what I needed about, a good 10, 15 minutes of just, okay, first, I didn't know you liked me. I like you too. Let's make out for a little bit. I like kissing. I'm sorry if that makes me a fag, but I like kissing a woman. I like the tongue kisses. I like to suck on the nipple. I like to lead into it. The build up and the anticipation is what I like. And it's amazing when you get into a relationship. What happens is it wasn't even a relationship, but it was a week of me. Once we did finally have sex that night. We did have sex that night, but it came at the expense of, like, I know she doesn't like this foreplay shit. And this is going through my head. I know she's not liking this. She's telling me she doesn't like this. Oh, why can't we just get down to it? And I was like, well, let's what happens is you think that that's the only one you're going to get, right? And it's up to the man, really, to perform and to knock it out of the park. But when she's like, oh, I just want to watch a movie tonight, and she wanted to watch that movie, she was really obsessed about watching that movie, and then I didn't realize that was supposed to be a tutorial. If you've not seen this horrible fucking movie, it was like a bad Tarantino, and I'm not a big Tarantino fan anyway, other than Reservoir Dogs. Maybe I'll look at Pulp Fiction again one day, but True Romance, great story, but he's just, I don't know, whatever. He's just like a comic book nerd that's kind of like gone farther than he probably should have. But this was like a bad knockoff Tarantino, this New Zealand film about the Maoris, and the guy he's a wife beater, and I'm watching this and I realized that's what you want. What the fuck am I with you for? And that was when the penny dropped. It's like, you know what? I have to love myself a little bit more than this. Get the fuck out of my house. And it's not like she left that day and I thought, I've self-actualized. I feel better about myself. And I am a man who likes tenderness and sweetness, and that's not bad. No, it took a good couple of weeks before I realized, okay, I'm not the only man out there who's not a rapist, And I don't think most men are. I don't think most men can throw a woman against a wall. I mean, I made some joke too. Like I said, as a guy who lived as a woman for 7 months, I know how valuable clothes can be. You sure you want me to rip them off? You want me to rip your clothes off you? Come on, you don't actually mean that. She was extremely well off as well. That was another thing. Like, that was a little bit of self-actualizing as well, because at that time I lived in this house with other comedians in a box room. Like, I couldn't even fucking move. It was like that, and everybody was stoned all the time. And she had her own flat in Canary Wharf. And so when I would go out to her house, but she had everything. She had a huge flat in Canary Wharf, all to herself. And I felt bad about that. And then I remember thinking, I asked her how she got it. She goes, well, my parents, if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't have this flat. And I thought, oh, okay. Now I don't feel so bad, because that may be a shitty box room I got, but at least I pay for it, And that's what I felt about, like, maybe the clothes thing. Like, maybe you can afford to have your clothes torn off of you and go out and buy some new ones. It's like The Who. I love The Who, but they smashed their instruments after every show. I thought, even in the early days, I thought somebody must be giving them money to keep buying, especially in those days, because I think they were all working class. Like, who was buying the guitars and the drum kits every time they destroyed them? Anyway, so that was my Me Too story. I'll give you another one if you want. This is a fun. This one I didn't put up because I knew people were going to think this was irrelevant or irreverent. But when I put that one up last night, I just thought, oh my God, now you're going to get a bunch of men. See, that's what happened. I got a bunch of men identifying with me and saying that I had integrity for throwing her out. And I said, if I had real integrity, I would have told her to take a hike from day one. But you don't know that, because when you're in a sexual situation, when you get in, your self-esteem is just it's you'd have to be the bodhisattva not to be affected by it. It's just, that's what relationships do. It puts you in this, unless you're completely self-actualized, or it is a prostitute scenario where it's a simple matter of goods for money received. Your self-esteem is so caught up in this, and you're in this kind of little microcosm of madness. right? And if it's a bad relationship, right? And you don't know who's right. Like, is she right? Am I supposed to be? Is there something wrong with me that I don't? Right? And I kept saying, and then of course when you get out of you want to hear that like it was only her fault. You wouldn't be human otherwise. Most people are not mature sexually, right? You don't. Oh yeah, man, it sounded like she was a total bitch. Yeah, she was. Yeah, what a bitch. Yeah, you know. But my part was I could have, if I'd had enough self-esteem, I could have said like, look, I'm sorry if you don't, if that's what you want to be. I don't like to throw women against the wall and tear their clothes off. So there you go. And if that makes me a fag, it makes me a fag. What do I care? Let me do another one for you. Now this one was just funny. This was the first one. So what happened yesterday? So I went to Balaam, and I felt like that deja vu. I felt like, oh my god, it was just like I don't know. I can't describe it. And then we went to the pub, and we were supposed to hook in to do a test to see if we could show the film there. And he didn't. Scott didn't bring this VGA thing. He didn't have one. The guy said, "Well, you can get one up the road at Maplin's." And Janet, elderly Janet, has a mini a Morris Minor from 1969. You know those old English cars, and it's like a proper box, and it was so fun to be in it. It was just, and it bounced every time we hit a bump. It's like you thought you were going to die, and the car was going to fall apart, and that was fun. It was worth it just for that trip to Maplin's, the electronics store. Boom, 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 and but Janet was saying something because Janet watches these videos. And Janet runs a comedy night, and she was telling me about this. There's a Portuguese guy in town who wants to break into the British comedy scene. He wants to break into the English-speaking scene. And apparently he's a big guy over there in Portugal. And he has really dark material. And I like hearing about people who've got dark material. But as her and I were walking to the pub, I think she said something about, because she watches these videos, and she is a Will Franken patron and supporter. And she said, can I make a suggestion? And it's weird when people say that to me. Can I make a suggestion? And it doesn't matter how sweet they say it. There's something in me that goes, sure. What kind of suggestion? It's like this little bit of, God damn, I got to hear a suggestion. Ooh, it's tough because I'm a stubborn motherfucker. Stubborn. And I said, okay, just take the suggestion. And she said, a lot of your videos, you talk about how you don't watch comedy, you don't like comedy, you hate comedy, that's why you do it. You do comedy because, like, whatever. And I go, oh my God, yeah, I know, I'm negative. And she says, maybe you need to do a little more schmoozing. I said, oh my God, and she was telling me about the Portuguese guy. And she said, like this Portuguese guy, he was all, how do I do this? How do I do at the gig? And how do I get ahead? How do I do? And then she said, I was going to invite you to come see the Portuguese guy last night, but I know you probably would have said no. I said, well, yeah, but only because it would have been at a loss. I would have had to pay to get on the tube to go out and see the Portuguese guy. And then the worst part, I would have been sitting in the audience and going, fuck, that's hard. John Belushi. Right? When I was a kid, somebody gave me that. It was a very exploitative book by Bob Woodward of All the President's Men fame. But he'd written this book on John Belushi's life and death. And, I was a kid when I read that book. Because he died, I was 10 years old when he died. And my mother got me that book. My mother, in her own weird way, as much as I forget, she tried to understand my desire to be a comedian, because I wanted to do comedy since I was 9 years old, maybe even earlier, 6. I don't know. I was always trying to be funny, and she got me that book, and she also got me the movie Punchline with Tom Hanks. Did you ever see that? Tom Hanks and Sally Field, and just really anyway. But she tried sometimes, not all the times, but she tried. Anyway, so in the book Wired, which I don't know if I couldn't reread now, because I remember just being like, okay, this is how many, and he did all these drugs, and he was a cokehead, and it was exploitative. But there was a scene where one of his high school teachers takes him to a summer stock theater because he thinks that Belushi is going to love this experience because Belushi's a class clown. And, we've all in our lives had that one understanding teacher, right? That, Kids in the Hall have this great thing where Bruce McCullough is telling you what you need to do to be a comedian. And it's a list of really funny things like, if in order to be a comedian, you need to get drunk with your friends on a Friday night and piss out the back of a moving truck. That funny stuff. Great monologue. And he says, at one point he goes, and don't listen to your teachers. Remember, the only teacher you need to pay attention to is your English teacher. There was something about like, yeah, the kind of fun teacher, that was the one. Everybody else you should ignore. In other words, be an anti-authoritarian. But nowadays everything seems flipped. It's like, pay attention to the watch what the other comedians are doing and do that and network and schmooze and So this teacher takes John Belushi, the young high school student John Belushi, to see Summer Stock because he thinks the kid's gonna like it. He's obviously theatrical. He wants to be on stage, and they watch this comedy performance on the stage. And afterwards, the teacher asked Belushi, "What'd you think?" He goes, "I was horrible." "Well, you didn't like the show?" And Belushi says, No. The whole time I was watching it, I wanted to be on the stage." And I understood that from a very early time. That's why I don't go out and see comedy, because I just sit there and I go, I can only be on the stage. I cannot sit in the audience and watch it. I cannot do it unless it is one of my gods. Unless it's a Chris Morris doing something, or a Peter Cook comes back from the dead, something. It's got to be something earth-shattering. But if I went and saw John Bishop winging it, I'd be sitting in the audience going, "Give me the fucking microphone!" Like, it's something I couldn't do. I can't do it. I'm unable to do it. Sometimes I'm able to do it if I've just had a show and I'm sitting down sweaty and I feel a bit magnanimous and I want to watch somebody else. I don't know if I'm going to watch anybody tomorrow, because I'm closing the show. I'll try to. I'll be nice to people. I want people to know that I'm actually not a bad person. That if I have done things bad in the past, or that have been, it's because I felt that things needed to be said, and I who knows. But she was explaining that to me. And I said, do you think I'm a bad person? And then this made me feel better. I said, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" Because when people say that, I said, I don't want to be remembered. I don't want to be remembered as a negative guy. I saw somebody last night. He said, "Oh yeah, I remember your Facebook, your nasty Facebook stuff." And I go, I don't want to be known for that. I don't want to be known for that. I want to be known as a man who made people laugh and think and laugh, and who did his part in trying to make us do a little bit better, and things are going cocky wobbly right now. And I said, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" This is as she's driving her 1969 Morris Minor. What a car, man. It reminded me of this. I used to have a black VW Beetle, and I knew nothing about cars, but it was one of those that the engine was hung out in the back. It was just, you could see it was like a dune buggy thing. And I didn't have it for long because it was just, what happened was I ended up selling it to this guy because I didn't know how to fix a car, and he fixed it that day and just drove off in it. So I sold it for like a real low price. I don't know anything about cars, other than like it's cool to be in one. But the glove box, it didn't have a glove box, and for some reason the exhaust would just come through. You could smell the gasoline fumes would come in and hit you. The petrol fumes would just, as you were driving. And I thought, I can't be doing this for too much longer. But anyway, whatever. So I'm driving. So she's driving her Morris Minor around in Balham. And I said, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" And she says, "No, not at all. I think you need to be a what was the word she used? A nastier person." I said, "Oh, I see. Okay, you mean more insincere." So that doesn't make me feel bad now, because that's another thing. right? Here you get caught up in the shit, going, okay, I don't throw women against the wall and tear their clothes off. I'm not a real man. I'm not a real man because it's not all fatal attraction. It's not all, turn on the faucet and fuck her right there in the sink. I do like to do things creative sexually, but it's just, yeah. So here I'm getting caught up in that. I'm not a rapist, therefore I'm not a real man. I'm not a real lover, you know. And they go like, I'm a bad person because I don't schmooze. If I was a nicer person, I would schmooze, but that's not it at all. And she may not have known that, but she told me something I really needed to hear, you know. Because I say this sometimes, I have to like somebody to be able to, and it's been a career handicap. Surely it's been a career handicap. I can't just turn it off and go, Tom, how's it going? Hey, listen, as far as that show's going, you got anybody in mind for? I'm always available. I don't, and if I have a reputation as being if I may bring up Beethoven, I know, what's he bringing up Beethoven for? Why is it always Beethoven? When everybody should read Beethoven's Heiligenstadt Testament, where he's writing to his brothers to explain he's got this hearing condition. And it's not so much, I mean, he is kind of moaning the irony that music is his life, and yet very soon he's not going to be able to hear any of it. But what's more important in that letter is that he is saying, so many people don't know who I am. They see an angry man, they see a hunched over misanthrope, and they don't know that I just can't hear them. It's really sad. The Heiligenstadt the Heiligenstadt Testament. This is what he wrote in his 30s, I believe, after he discovered he was going deaf. And it was basically like, people are going to misunderstand me, but don't just know, my brothers. And it makes Ode to Joy at the end. His use of Ode to Joy in the Ninth Symphony makes so much sense. Just know that I love you for all mankind. I love. Well, he was fucking angry, like every good artist is. But basically he was saying, don't misjudge me. Don't think that I'm not who I seem. I just can't hear you. And I'm walking around with this and I can't hear you. But he didn't want to tell anybody. He didn't want to, I mean, how could at that time the world's greatest composer say that I'm going to lose my hearing soon, so, that was it, so don't misjudge my inability to schmooze or my reluctance to schmooze as I'm just a nasty fucker. I do things because I have, as Scott says, and it's true, I have an optimism in the human race, or how I described it in that piece I wrote for the Index on Censorship, with the paradoxical self-destructive optimism, the satirist. It's a self-destructive optimism, and we believe in the abilities of the arts and mankind to such an extent that we always fall into the self-destruction of doing these things and thinking that the rest of the world will follow in liberation. And yet some of us, and myself included, we're almost afraid of that power. Not only does the power hurt us, but oftentimes, well, here's what I said to Janet as well, because we were talking about, because she books a show. And I said, what if you, because she said, you hear it both ways. This is what Janet said to me. She said, you hear it both ways. Sometimes you'll hear people saying there's this great renaissance in comedy, and there's, there's a great renaissance in comedy right now, but the likes of which we've never seen. And then she said, people like you say that there's not. And I said, well, the only reason people are saying there's a great renaissance in comedy is because so many people are doing it. I said, we're looking out the windscreen of the Morris Minor. And I said, I bet I could go up to that guy right now. And we start talking, and I could tell him I'm a comedian, and I'll bet he knows somebody somewhere, maybe even himself, who is I did a comedy course. So I got on stage one time. My cousin did this. I bet he knows somebody in his family who's somewhere in some venue, either large or small, has done an open mic, has done a comedy open mic, and that wasn't always the case. Once upon a time, it was a very rare thing, an extremely rare thing to meet somebody who was a comedian, right? I said, what if you? So I said, what if you had a stable? What if I put together a stable of 10 comedians in Britain that I thought would just like they were doing something different. Uh, let me give you some names. David Stanier. I like this guy. He's a very weird, irreverent. I saw him do a gig up north somewhere. Young kid, and there was something silly and beautiful about him that I thought was really good. David Stanier. Spencer Jones is a very bizarre physical comedian, really funny. I've been on a few bills with him. Uh, you know, I know I'm going to leave some names out here, and people are going to be pissed off. But that's just two. Let's just do that. There are people that I think are, let's say I got a stable of 10 of those, and we were the only performers on a regular residence type basis. I think that would be a revolution. That would be a renaissance. But there's not a renaissance if you just say like everybody. There's nothing, we turned a broom closet into a venue, and 50 people are coming to do the open mic, and we always shuffle it around, and we always make it different. That's not what you need. Once upon a time, like you had Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul. I mean, there's a book called Seriously Funny about that revolution from Catskills to the clubs. Uh, there were a pantheon of performers in that book, Seriously Funny. There was a pantheon of rule breakers and game changers at that time. To say that there's a renaissance in comedy implies that everybody who's getting on stage right now is a rule breaker, and that's not, because they will always be in the minority. I'm going to get to my second Me Too story here in a second. Or maybe I'll make that the basis of the next video, unless I get into a hotel tomorrow, which I do hope. But that's how the Renaissance happened. So what you do is you get a stable of 10 great comedians, just an arbitrary number, but 10. And you, instead of swapping them out every week with another guy doing a brand new guy or girl coming up and doing their 10 minutes, instead of swapping them out every week, you just make the rule breakers write a brand new set every week. And the best comedians can do that. The bad comedians only have 10 minutes for the rest of their lives. That's it, and that's how it works in America. They have 10 minutes, and they do the 10 minutes, and then they get on Conan or whatever, and they do 10 minutes, and that's it. And they're the 10-minute people for the rest of their lives. But the rule breakers, like a Lenny Bruce or a Peter Cook or whatever, they're going to constantly be writing, because that's the way they have the comedian's mind. And if you don't have the comedian's mind, you have the 10-minute mind. You have the 10-minute schmoozing mind. So don't misjudge me as a I don't want. Look, I don't know how much longer I have on this earth. I don't think I'm going to die anytime soon. But I want to be a good person, and know that my satire is my satire, and I do it because I believe in it. I don't do it because I just. Well, I do want to start a fight. Sometimes I want to start a fight sometimes because I'm bored. And when everybody agrees with something, and there's a credibility to the Me Too, and it's unquestioned, and, well, just let them talk because, you could get in trouble if you go against the Me Too thing. I'm a rebel. So this came to me like when Scott and I were playing Trivial Pursuit last night in Balham. I met some great people last night in Balham. That'll be the basis of my next video. Great people. Anyway, so here's my other Me Too story. This is a true story. I didn't put this one up on Facebook, so you're hearing it now for the first time. #MeToo. One time when I was 21, this 50-year-old female psychiatrist invited me back to her flat in Springfield, Missouri to watch The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. She promised me a ride home later, which was nice because there was no public transit in the area. Midway through the film, she said, "I want to do something for you," and then she got on her knees and said, "I'm going to give you head." As a man, I felt like I was socially obligated to respond in the positive, even though I wanted to finish the movie and I was not expecting this sudden twist of affairs. Later, she went to the kitchen wearing only a kimono, and as we were talking about Freud or something, she produced a jar of honey from a shelf and smeared some on her pubic hair. I did not love her, and so was not interested in performing cunnilingus on her, but it would have made me feel guilty if I didn't eat her out now that she had put the honey there. Plus, I would have felt like I was less of a man if I didn't. She did not take me back to my house until the next morning, and I felt ashamed and didn't tell anybody about it. Only much later did I use the image of honey on the pubic hair for a satirical piece on sexual harassment seminars. Comedy was the means I used to hide my shame. So that's that was all a true story. I met this woman. It was funny because I met her it was a mutual friend, and she was having a birthday party that night. And I was just being silly, and I was dancing with, as you do, like I can really dance, but it was her birthday. She was turning 50 that night. I was 21. I was a student at university, and I was dancing with her. And she goes, and she said, "Do you want to create a scandal?" I said, "Yeah, fuck it." She goes, "Leave the party with me tonight, and I'll take you home later." I go, "Fuck it," And it was a small town. I was bored, and we went up to her house, and she put this movie on. I hadn't seen it yet. The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and the Lover, and I was really into it. And then she said, "Give me a head." And I remember thinking, like, this is what a man goes through. Like, well, I'm a man. I can't refuse. She wasn't bad looking, but I remember thinking, like, you're a man. You're not supposed to refuse sex. So that, but I don't know. And then the cunnilingus, I have to like a girl. I have to like or love a girl to do cunnilingus. I'm not going to do it with somebody I just want to fuck. But she did. She put the honey there. And for those of you who've seen my sexual harassment sketch, which I did recently in Ireland back in May, and then I got into trouble for that. Times have changed. Once upon a time, that was one of my strongest bits. That was one of my, I want to say safe, but I could do that bit anywhere that would get a laugh. People loved that bit. It was a joke about what is sexual harassment? How do we know when we're being sexually harassed? Women, there is nowhere on the world that is safe for you to be. It mocked the notion that women are all victims. But it was a funny bit. It was like left wing and right wing really loved that piece. Those of you watching this may remember that piece. And he would do these role-playing scenarios. He's like, let's say her boss is named Jorge, and he comes around the corner and he twiddles his mustache and he goes, "Señorita Lisa." There's all sorts of funny shit. And then, but the honey on the pubic hair, that was the scene where I pick a girl out in the audience and I say, let's say that she goes to work on Monday morning wearing nothing at all but a dab of honey she smeared on her pubic hair. Is she making herself a target? You better believe it. That came from that situation because she did that, and I remember thinking, fuck, I can't just let her sit there. What am I gonna do? Like, let her sit there she was crazy. And you know what? She was not the first psychiatrist I've been involved with. There was another one in New Jersey, and both women were insane. I mean, that's a crazy thing. Isn't that crazy? But I know that well, they've got the books and the DSM-4, and they know what's normal and abnormal. They're just as crazy as the rest of us. Don't go to a psychiatrist. Don't give them any fucking money. Don't take their pills. They're all lunatics. I didn't mind that. I mean, anyway, so like, what am I? I wasn't a victim. I hesitate to call myself a victim, but I did feel ashamed. And I remember at the time thinking, well, this will make a chapter in a book one day. But it turned into a bit, right? Because that's what I write. I write bits. I write satires. And that sexual harassment counselor bit with that was one of my mainstays. That was a great closer. All these bizarre role-playing scenarios, but the joke was that he was actually sexually harassing the females so the audience, was involved in this bit. And I would say, what's the safest place for you to be? What about right here in a sexual harassment seminar? You think this would be safe, but this is actually the least safest place you can be right now. I sexually harass women all the time. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book. You call a seminar, you get them all together, then I'd pull out like a fiver, and I'd say to a woman in the front, I go, "You like this? Make a lot of money teaching these seminars. But you got to know the right people." Okay, you guys see what I'm talking about here. It's a very dangerous place for you. It was funny, but then, times have changed, and I did that out in Ireland recently, and the woman said, "What's the point? What's the point?" That's what they shout now sometimes. If they can't really determine if a bit's racist or sexist or Islamophobe, they'll just shout out, "What's the point?" And then they pretend that they just don't get it. What's the point? What's the point? The point is to have a fucking laugh, Right? The point is not to give, by default, give something credibility because it has a hashtag to it, not toxic masculinity. Just that's the point. Have a fucking laugh and get over all this bullshit. Anyway, there might be another one to follow. Till then, hope you've learned something. No, I certainly have. Ladies and gentlemen, good night.